Hey guys, what's up? So welcome to video 8. So in this one, we are going to go ahead and complete up our user registration. So if this is the first video you're finding, I recommend you check out the previous videos because we build on top of that to get here. So if you enjoy this kind of content, once again, I want to mention that please subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you can get new videos as we post. So let's get started. So we stopped off where we had a basic validation here. So now we want to be able to submit the form when a user has submitted everything. So for us to do that, I'm going to set up a function that's going to be responsible to submit the form. So here I'm going to do a const. It's going to be called on submit. So this is going to be equal to, it's going to be a function, and the only thing it's going to do is call an action to register a user. So if you go to our context actions, you notice that we already have a register.js file. So I'm actually going to create a folder here called auth. So I'm going to move the register.js inside auth. So if we go to register.js, it's basically a simple function that posts to auth/register. So we need to actually post the data. So we need to pass a second parameter to this. So that will be the data we post. So the data is going to actually be coming in from, you're going to be sending it from the form. So if we come here in the use form, here we can call that function, or we can call this function, and then once we call it, we can give it the data we want to send to the backend. So now you know that the data, all the data we have is saved in our form. So we can actually pass in the form here. And since in these actions, since here we are going to need to be communicating with the reducer, we want to be able to pass the dispatch function that we get from our use reducer that we created earlier. So here, when we call it, okay, so where is it? Let's see. Okay, so here, when we call register, so it's the register, we need to give it the dispatch function. So here we can pass dispatch, and I'm going to be selecting it from our context. So actually, if we go to our contacts here, you can see that this is how we bring in our context. So I'm going to bring it in here actually. So bring in the context, use context to get the context. So pass the context that we created, and now in the context we want the dispatch. So we can pass auth the dispatch. I believe that's how we called it, but to check again. So once we get it, we want to pass it here. So to check again, we go to context and then provider. So we called it auth dispatch. Good. Okay, so once we come back to our form, basically when we submit, we need to pass this function to our layout. So if we come back to the layout, we need to destructure it from the form like this. So this is going to be calling the function to submit. So here this has to change, of course, but we don't need it anymore. It was just for demo purposes, so we can as well remove it. And if we check this one again, cannot resolve Axios in helper as Axios. So since we created a folder and moved it in there, we need to change the import also to go one up again. Okay, so let's take a look at what we are doing. So here in use form, we basically are calling the function. So we're going to give it a form, the current form values that we have. And once we call it, we pass it in the dispatch, meaning it's going to be able to communicate with the reducer. So now, if we go to the register.js, here, we also need to get the dispatch that we send. So here, we can get the dispatch. Okay. So we need to pass to get the form. So the way we get the form, we are going to be destructuring the values, because if you look at our API documentation, let's see, the values have to be sent in snake case. So for us, we have them in camel case. So we need a way to send them in snake case. Okay, so if we take a look, so if we close the look here, the username is fine, the email is fine, and the password is fine. So here I'm going to destructure them from the form. So it will be email, password, and the username. And then these are the ones which will be last name and first name, we can have them. So that will be last name, and then we can rename them. So we can rename them by doing that to, let's say, one that's the snake case version. So putting a comma can allow us to add the last name. Actually, that was the first name. So let me add first name. Also, I'll rename it to first underscore name. Yeah, so once we have these values, we are going to go ahead and send them in the post here. So I'm actually going to copy all of them. So here we can put a comma and pass the data as the second parameter. And then here, okay, yeah, so we need to get the dispatch here. Actually, I thought I did. So let's get the dispatch. Okay, so once we get that one in, we can use it somewhere else if we need to. So let's try again here. And you can see that when we click, we basically don't get the error. But if we check our network here, we get the 2 requests being sent. So right now they are all pending. Let's see. So you can see they all return with errors. The first name is required, so we are not getting the first name. So let's go ahead and fix this first name issue. So when it comes here, we can now, of course, we have renamed them. We can remove the camel case ones and make sure we are sending the ones that are renamed. Okay, so let's do that again. If we do that, you see we get one error. This is for the password. So we are going to need a way to show the errors, but for now, let's show the loading state of this action. So what we've done now is we have the dispatch here. So when we set up reducers, their role is to update the state. So we can only update the states when we tell the reducer to do so. So right here, before we call the Axios, we are going to need to dispatch something to the reducer. So for us to do that, we are going to need to uniquely identify what we sent to the reducer. So I'm going to go to constants here, and then I'm going to create a folder called action types. Then in it, I'm going to have an index.js file. So in here, we're going to have some types. So one is going to be auth loading. So we can have auth loading. This is going to be set to auth loading. So we're going to have more. So we can have like auth success. Actually, I'm going to make them specific. So let's have register loading. Then let's also have register success. Let's also have register error, so we can get the errors. So register error. Register error. Oh, this should be loading. Damn it. Okay, so once we have the type, so in the action, before we even call the endpoint, we are going to dispatch that we are loading. So here we can do dispatch. Then we want to dispatch a type. So you can add a type. Then this can be register loading. So register loading. Okay, so this is going to send this to our reducer. So in our reducer, we need to handle this and change the loading state of the whole global context. So if you go to reducers, auth, since we are using the dispatch for the auth, we need to go to the auth because that's the initial state that was set up to return that dispatch. So here we can now switch and do a case for when the register is loading. Okay, so when the register is loading, we need to look at our initial state. So if you go to initial states, then auth state, you see we have loading is set to false in auth. So here we can return an object. So first we want to return everything we already have in the state. So we are going to spread them over, and then we are going to edit only the pieces that we need. So we're going to go to auth. So we can actually keep everything in state auth. So state.auth, and also change only one thing. So we change loading to true. Okay, so now if we come back to our use form, we should be able to select this state. So initially, of course, it's going to be loading false, but when we start dispatching here, this will be sent to the reducer, and that will change it to true, meaning we should get it in the form. So here we can actually get, let's see, we are getting auth dispatch. We can get auth state. So if we log auth state, we come over here and log auth state. Let's go to the console. You can see that we have auth, which is loading false. So you can actually select it by doing this. So we can now select auth again. Okay, so if we do auth, we should be able to get the same values that we have in the initial state, which would be these two, because now we are selecting this. Okay, so we might actually remove this because we might not even need it, but I'm going to keep it in there because normally you would have more here, and having objects can be a good way to, in fact, work with if you want to pass this value to any function. Okay, so right here we have auth, and then we want the loading. So we can actually destructure loading again. So we can do loading, and now if we load it, if we log it and come over here, we should be able to see that the loading is false. So now if we start typing in the form and click here, you can see that the loading turns to true, and it is still true. So we need to pass this value to our layout such that it updates the button. So we can easily do that here by passing loading, and in the layout, which would be, we can destructure it too. So now on the button here, we can add another prop called loading. So this is going to be loading when we are loading. So this will be, when this is true, this is going to be loading. So we also want to disable the click when we are loading. So we can add an OR. So if we come back, we can now add new values. Let's see, and click submit. You can see it's loading. Okay, so now we need a way to stop this when we get an error or when we get a success. So the way we do that is, if you go to the actions, so now we are sending the request, but when it returns here in the .then, it means it's going to have succeeded. So instead of us doing nothing and console logging stuff, we can dispatch it another type. So here we can dispatch. So we're going to be dispatching a type. So this is going to be register success because it's in the .then. So for us to get the response, we can now add payload. So this will be what we get from the server. So the server sends us the data in res.data. So if we have any errors, we are also going to dispatch those errors to our reducers. So instead of returning this, I'm going to have to dispatch. So we're going to be dispatching error, and those errors with Axios, those errors come in error.response.data. Okay, so once we dispatch those, now we need to handle these. Of course, the type should be register error. We need to handle the updating of the local state in the reducer with these types and this payload that's being sent. So if we go to our, let's see, reducers auth, now we are handling a case for register loading. So we need to also handle when we get a success and when we get an error. So I'm going to change this one to success. So when we have a success, we want to turn the loading to false, of course, and we can set the data to the data that is sent from the payload. So instead here, we can actually destructure the payload and also the type from the action, like that. So here we only do type. So now that will mean we have the payload, and we can set the payload here and turn this to false. So here we can turn the error when we are loading to false. But when we get errors, which would be register error, so I'm gonna copy this have it here. So on register error, then we want to set the error to, we want to set the loading to false, and then we want to set the error to the error that gets passed in as payload. So if we take a look again, that would be this one, basically the errors from the server. So so what that will do, if we come back and try to do the same thing, let's do that, click submit, we get the loading, and once there is an error, you see here we get a 400, and then the loading stops. So now we need a way to show the errors, guys. So if we take a look at the errors, because we should have them in the state actually. So I'm going to come to the use form and add a console log for this global context. So right here, I can also destructure the auth state. So we are getting loading, we can get error and data. So if you look at the initial state, we need to make sure we have those, because when we destructure them, when they are not there, they will fail. So instead of having user, I'm going to call it data. Then I'm going to have an error. It's going to be null by default. So we should have this. So if you come back to the use form and console log them, the error, then the data. Okay, so that should be able to give us everything that we want to know. So if we come back, the form will be reset. So let's do it again. You can see that things are data null, loading false, and error null. So if we submit, loading is true. Then when we get an error, you see we have error. It has first name, last name, password errors. Okay, so now we need to display these errors on the UI. So for us to do this, we actually are going to need to display them in a way that can be easy to do it. Because right now, if we take a look, this is giving us like very nested data, which can be hard to work with. So what we're gonna do is set up another state, another local state here. So I'm gonna duplicate this, then this is gonna be field errors. So this is gonna be set field errors. So once we have an error, once we have an error in Redux, we need to update this in a way that we can easily work with in the layout. So how do we know that we have gotten an error? We are going to be looking out for the error, the changes in the error value. So the way we look out for the changes is by using the use effect hook. So you can have use effect, and since we are looking out for the error, we need to pass this error as a dependency. So let's import use effect. So once we have this, now we can check if the error is actually not null. So we can do if. Okay, so once we have an error, we need to update our form values with an error, with that error. So since you notice that these errors are gonna be many, and they are in a way that, let's see, possibly we can see them again. So since they are an array, we are going to loop over them and then update the state like we did with the onChange. So we can easily know the field that error belongs to. So here we can loop over them. So we can do a for, then here let's have a const item in error, and then we want to set field errors. So we're going to be setting the field errors. We want to pick all the errors that exist. So that should be field errors. And then we want to set the key. So the key will be the key here. So if you saw how we are getting them, we get the key and then with the errors inside. So the key is going to be the item itself, and then the values will be basically the values. So for now, I'm going to be taking one error at a time. So we can get the first error. So that will be item, then 0. Okay, so once we have these errors set, we need to pass them to our form. So we set them, we can come over here and set field errors like that. So once we pass the field errors, we can go to the layout. So the layout would be here, and then we want to set those errors to a specific input. So let's say we want to set errors on the username. So we can come on the input and then add another prop called error. So the error basically will be an object in this case. So that will be the condition on when the error will be, and then the content. So the condition will be when in the field errors, let's see if we can bring them in here. So the condition will be in the field errors if we have the one for the username. So if you have one for the username, and then we want to show the error. So here we can add this, and then in here we can define more configuration for the error label. So here we can define the content will be the real error. So that would be form.username, and then we can define where we want it to look. So when we define an error, we can add a pointing. So we can add a pointing here, and we want it to be below. So this should be a string. And if you're confused about this, you might be, and that's okay, because it can take a while if you need these things. So this, what we are doing here is we're saying that if in here, where is my use form? So you see, when we have an error, we set the form errors, and then the key will be the current error. So this will be equivalent to our UI input name. So we are saying that if the username has an error, then show it. Then this is the configuration to add a pointer, so a user can easily know which field is to fill. So if we come back here, nothing should change. So I'm gonna go ahead and change everything for the other fields, just so we test it out at once. So I'm gonna come over here, do the same thing here, same thing here, same thing here. All right, so let's change the names. So I'm gonna copy this, change that, come over here, copy the mail, change that, come over here, copy the last name. So this last name and first name are going to be different because they come in Pascal case as they come from the Python server. So we are going to get them like that. Then for the first name, we can do similar. That should be first name. Okay, for the username, that's okay. So let's go ahead and test out and see what we have. So if we come back here, we can fill the form. Let's see. Click submit, we get the loading. When we have an error, you can see that we point to the password. And then this is the pointing one that is showing below. So what I was saying is, when you look at the error that we have in in context, basically we have these keys, and the keys are actually objects, and the objects have arrays inside, so which is complex to work with. So that's why we created this helper to be able to set the key to an input name that we can easily work with, and then set the value to that. Okay, so that should do. If I go ahead and fill this correctly, we should basically get another error, I believe. So you see we get one here, but this error is actually persisted. So on each submit, we need to remove it. So if we come over here in our use form, which would be here, before we submit here, we can set field errors. So you can reset them basically to nothing. Okay, so let's go ahead and test out for something that is successful. So let me create a user. This user is going to be called root user. Then the name is going to be root. Then the last name is going to be user. Then the email is going to be root@root.com. So now you can add a password that is correct. So click submit. It's going to take a while. So there are no errors. And yeah, the errors are still null, meaning that the user was registered. If we go to the network tab and look at the last request, you see we have a 201 and we get the user created. So now let's see how to know that the user has been created and navigate to the login route. So to do that, we are using the use effect. So the same way we are able to tell that we have errors, we can have another use effect to check if the data is there, if the user is there basically. So this is going to be depending on the data, and as you see, data comes from the auth state. So whenever we have data, now we can navigate to the login. We can do if data, then we can navigate. So the way we can navigate is we can use the history from React Router DOM So we need to import it, but before we do that, we need to use a hook. So let's see, history. The hook is going to be called use history. So this hook gives you access to the history anywhere in the application. So here we can do history.push. So we push to a path. So we are going to auth/login. Okay, so it will also be good that we tell them if the user was created, but we'll be doing that on the login page. So this is well and good. If test this one out, if we come over here, we can now use another user. So I'm going to use Sam Smith. Sam Smith, doesn't matter. Then Sam Smith at gmail.com. And the password is going to be password. Hit submit. Boom. We are redirected to the login, but we misspelled our route. So it is taking auth. So we need to add an auth here. So if we do that, now in the auth, we can actually check if this data is there, so we can welcome them. So I'm gonna do something simple just to test that it works. So if we go to our login here, we can select the same thing, use context. So let me add this. Let's import it. Let's import the global context. So if we have data, we can say something like welcome. So you can do if data, then we can do welcome. Then we can get the username, I believe, from data.username, and we'll check it. Then otherwise, we want to tell them to log in. That will be this. So to fix this, I'm going to use a template editor instead. So cut this one out. Use this. Anyway, so let's test it out. I'm not sure how the username will come through, so I can add this to prevent it from crashing. But I'm going to add a console log so we can take a look at it. Okay, so one last time to test. So let's go to user test. I'm going to use the same thing at gmail.com. It's going to be password. You can see that the request is going on. We have the progress update here. So once it's done, you can see we have a welcome test. So good. So meaning that we have been able to register our user. So in the next video, we are going to go ahead and log in the user. I know this took too long, but guys, that's all it takes. If there are things you don't get, I recommend you don't stop. Keep pushing. It's going to make sense in the end. And of course, it might not make sense in these videos, but as you keep pushing yourself to look at these things, you're going to find yourself learning them on the way. So thanks guys for watching. Remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, share the video with anyone if you can, and I'll see you in the next one.